Well, aloha, folks. Jason Scott here with the Veterans Financial Edge. And today's episode, I got the distinct pleasure to interview Kevin Fagundes, Chief Petty Officer First Class, for those of you layman terms, E6 in the Navy, retired veteran after 20 years, joined the Navy at 17, thought he was going to go on a certain career path. That trajectory changed a little bit throughout his career, and then successfully transitioned retirement out of the Navy and is now an employee with Booz Allen, Department of Defense contractor supporting the United States Space Force. We talk about quite a few things. I always like to focus on about 5 core questions. What made you choose the Navy? Why the Navy? How are you able to balance in life and work and still get a degree while in the Navy? When did you start thinking about transitioning from the Navy into the civilian workforce, and how did you get prepared? The conversation just was great. I mean, we planned for about a 20-minute, interview, end up being a 55-minute show. So when this is all done, post-editing, you're going to be about a 50 to 60-minute episode, but definitely well worth the listen. And if you're currently an active duty military member getting ready to transition, Kevin offers some great pearls of wisdom on how you plan and set yourself up for success to hopefully avoid being one of those 22 a day statistics. And as you all know, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I just hate the fact that we lose 22 veterans a day to suicide because they've lost their mission, their purpose, and their desire to continue to be with us. I firmly believe that it comes from a lack of being able to prepare for a successful transition. So Kevin has, transitioned very successfully. He's got a lot of good pearls of wisdom. You're going to want to listen. I really believe you're going to enjoy this show, and we're going to get started on it right now. Well, aloha, folks. It's your host here, Jason C. Scott with the Veterans Financial Edge. Today is episode 3, and I have the privilege and distinct honor, I'm laying it on really thick, to interview one of my good friends, fellow client, and fellow veteran, Kevin Fagundes. A little bit about him, 20-year veteran. God damn, God bless. Love the fact that I didn't turn off my Outlook to get that nice little background, but it's all good. That's what makes this shit real. And yes, I do swear a lot, folks, so if you don't like the passionate vernacular, apologies. There's other shows. But yes, Kevin Fagundes, 20-year Navy veteran, Petty Officer Second Class, I believe.
First Class.
Is what you retired as? What's that?
First Class.
So Petty Officer First Class, gotcha. Joined the Navy at a very young age. Don't know if we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then successfully transitioned into professional service, post-military service, working as a defense contractor with Booz Allen, and supporting our nation's Space Force in that role. And, it's really a big deal, folks, because, there's a statistic called 22 a day. It's near and dear to my heart. And a lot of that 22 a day is, it's surrounded about veteran suicide, right? And I firmly believe that, and there's metrics that support this, that a lot of those members that do commit suicide, it's basically for the lack of planning, right? Or the lack of support when getting ready to transition out. And so we're going to talk a little bit how Kevin was able to successfully do this. And so we'll just get started. So Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No worries. So tell us a little bit about yourself, man. I know you sent me the 5 W's. I know you pretty well, but for the audience that'll be watching this, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what makes Kevin tick.
Sure. So I grew up in Hanford, California, which is a little town south of Fresno, about 50,000 people. I grew up wrestling, playing football, working outside, kind of living a little bit more of a rural country lifestyle than what you would expect when you hear California. When I was probably 16 when I realized that I needed to get out of here. I needed to get out of California. I needed to go see what was kind of out there. My dad worked on a ranch. My mom worked in the school district. There really wasn't a lot of extra. I didn't have a college fund set aside or anything like that. So I knew it was going to be kind of up to me to make that happen. So I saw the Navy as a good opportunity. I thought I was going to go see the world. Turns out 70% of the world's water.
Well, okay, so I have to ask, out of all the branches of service, what made you pick the Navy?
Well, there's a different time. We're talking 2002 when I
Okay,
joined the delayed entry program. And I think as 2002, you were probably looking
I
down
was already
some,
deployed
yeah, you
multiple
were looking
times.
down the end of some iron sights. So I didn't, it wasn't that I was afraid to go do that. And I actually ended up going to do that later. It just, at the time, I thought I was going to become an underwater welder, get diving certified, and I was going to leave the service after 4 years. That was kind of what I wanted to do.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question then, is because at 17, nobody at 17 typically thinks they're going to do 20 years.
No, there
So
wasn't a
originally you, it
chance.
was like 4 years, get a trade, get out, go make some money, live the American dream.
Yeah, that was the plan. And then I went down to MEPS and I met a classifier that had other plans for me. And
Gotcha. Now explain
I
to the
said,
folks. You went from welding to what you're going to be doing, what you end up doing. What was it?
yeah. So I sat down and they looked at all my test scores and everything. And they said, hey, we want to make you a electronic warfare technician. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, that sounds cool, but I want to be a welder. And the guy looked at me and he goes, hey, man, the Army's right next door. They'll make you a welder tomorrow. And I said, no, I don't
We
want
take
to.
all kinds, brother. Yes, we do.
Yeah. So I said, hey, you know what? I think you're looking out for me. So why don't you tell me what you got? And he kind of laid out 5 different jobs. And one of them was cryptologic technician collections. And if you read the
Okay.
job sheet on that, it talked about dealing with CB radios and radio frequency propagation. And I kind of fell in love with it right there. And
Okay.
I ended up going to school and doing pretty well. And
Which basically for you was Great Lakes, right? That's where all Navy guys go,
well, it was Great Lakes in the beginning, and then I ended up in
right?
Pensacola.
Okay. And then your AIT school or whatever was Pensacola. Okay.
Yeah, yep, yep. So what
Gotcha.
changed the course of my story was my first tour. I was riding submarines. It was like a boys' club, man. There was probably 50 of us. We were tight. Camaraderie was good. And I said, you know what? Maybe I'll do more than 4 years. And I never repeated that atmosphere.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. You went from being on a vessel to where you're pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong, you're more of an office setting, behind a computer, right?
Yeah. So I did 3 tours with the National Security Agency working ops. So if we weren't downrange or around the world doing something kind of crazy, we were in an office environment. And
So you mean to
that,
tell me when you made the decision to make it a 20-year career, it didn't have anything to do with a lady friend or anything of that nature? Didn't no family just magically popped up? You were like, I'm in it to win it. Let's do it.
yeah, I mean, I'm married to my high school girlfriend still. So
Wow. And she was cool with it. She's like, hey, welder sounds cool, but it sounds like what you're doing is going to be even cooler. We might get to go do some stuff.
oh man, we were complete young and innocent kids. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into.
That's awesome. Well, shoots, man. So again, you had a pretty, like I said, you were on the submarine, which I don't know if you remember, one of my boys, he was an engineer on the fast attack subs out there at uh, Joint Base Pearl Harbor. He's now the chief facilities engineer for USAFA, but that was one of the highlights of his life, never having been able, never enlisted, never joined the military. And then when they would work on these submarines, when they would come in for, it's whatever that 3-year deal is, when a vessel comes in, they got to tear it down, build it back up. I can't remember the terminology for it. But then when they're
When they
done,
go
they
into
have to go
dry
out to
dock,
sea or go under. Yeah, dry dock. There we go. But he had most fortunate opportunity that when they completed one of the vessels, he actually had to be on the submarine while they went out to go test it upon completion of dry dock. And not too many people get to experience that, right? I mean, back in the day, I think they had they were called Tiger
Tiger Cruise.
rides, or Tiger Cruise. But then that all came to an end when one of them breached too quickly and took out a Japanese fishing boat.
I rode that boat.
Really? Oh boy.
The Greenville, man, that thing is it's a marvel of engineering, the fact that it's still going.
Yeah. So, fast forward a little bit into your career, per your dossier, you were able to get an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, and did you also get a master's degree as well while serving?
No, so I'm enrolled in a master's program now, but
Okay, okay, gotcha. But you did get an associate's and a bachelor's. And with your job skill set, being in the Navy, how were you able to balance the job, the family, and go to school? And what was the motivation, and how did you do it?
Well, so the motivation was pretty easy. To begin with, I was kind of told that you weren't going to be able to make higher rank in the Navy unless you had an associate's degree. Now they kind of did away with that, but at the time it was like get your degree or get out. Basically, they were kind of saying you weren't going to be able to promote past a certain pay grade, and I really wanted that, so I kind of set myself on pace to get a degree, and then I got 14-day notice that I was deploying to Iraq, and I was already enrolled. So I said, let's just, what's the worst thing? It's going to cost some money. Let's go for this. And so I literally went to Iraq. We were doing kind of 18, 20-hour days, and I was still doing college classes on top of that for about 3 or 4 months before I finished my associate's degree.
Let's talk about that for a second. A deployment to Iraq in that career field. So I'm assuming you were a support of MNDB, Multinational Division Baghdad? Or
no, I was in charge of, I was supporting JIX 1, and they were kind of the Joint Counter ID guys. So I was deployed with a EA-6B Prowler Squadron. I was an augment. They brought me on because they didn't have anybody to do the communications electronic attack or the counter IED system settings for their aircraft. So they brought me on. They brought me on as a liaison. I was working with the intel guys, and I was working with JIX 1 down in Baghdad, and then I was embedded with the squadron, so I was in their pre-flight briefs, and I was doing all their mission planning for them.
Oh wow!
So,
okay.
Yeah, it was office environment, but I was in MNF West, out in the Anbar. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Anbar. Okay, yeah. Ramadi, that area, right? Al Saad, yep. Okay, gotcha. So multiple tours to Iraq, just the one tour?
Yeah, I ended up doing 2.
Okay.
I did the first one in 2007 and 8, and then I went back in 2009.
So 2008, you and I overlapped. That was my 4th trip, I think, to Iraq at that time. That was during March Madness, is what we called it, when Muqtada al-Sadr decided to call off the ceasefire, and we had 40 days of indirect pretty much every day.
I remember it well. I remember it well.
So,
was it Jaish al-Mahdi or whatever they're calling it, the Mahdi Army?
Yeah, Jaish al-Mahdi Jam. Yeah, yep. Yeah, good times.
Man, there was a time where if an IED went off in Iraq, I could tell you with about 80% accuracy what kind of IED it was and how it was triggered, just because of all the research that we did. And when JAM came in, man, they changed the game.
So then did you guys coordinate with Sexy Charlie Echo X-Ray Charlie as well?
Yeah, the EOD
so
guys.
That's where I think maybe you and I actually intercrossed without even knowing it, because the mission set that I was doing there, I was heavily involved with biometric, getting data, right? So, and I was, where the Tigris meets the Euphrates. I was up in Katamia, which was literally right across the river from Sauter City, right? So we had a lot of activity in that area. But one of the things, and I tell the story to people because they can't believe it. So I was tasked with, I had a general that I had to liaise with, which he was insulted because I was only a sergeant first class. He was hoping to get a colonel on the team, which our colonel was working with the higher general. And so I had to work with the prison general, and my job was to, find out, how many times detainees were coming in, when were they getting released, and show training patterns. And the best way for me to do that was to get them all enrolled through the BAT Hide system, which, I'm pretty sure that's unclassed, but it's basically a biometric system that we use to collect fingerprints and photos, right, and information.
Well, I'm familiar with it.
And yeah, I know you're definitely familiar with it. And during that time, I was trying to figure out a way, how can I tabulate this data to display it, the way that senior officers like to see it, because they love visuals and graphics and charts and shit, right? So my wife, who was my fiance at the time, was an auditor for a gaming casino. And she was basically an Excel guru. And so we'd be talking on Skype. There was about 11-hour difference from where she was at, for us being over there. I think 11 and a half, whatever it was. And I would just be like, babe, without telling you what I'm doing, can you create a spreadsheet for me that I need it to do this, this, and this? I go, I will give you like the bones, but basically I'm bringing in data. I need to show how many times they're coming and going, what the frequency looks like, and how long they've been here. And she's like, oh, that sounds like a pivot table. I can do that easy. So I gave her the bones, and within like 10 minutes, boom, she shoots me over this Excel document. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to let you go because that's on unclass, right?
Yeah.
So then I got to download it to the authorized flash drive that I can take into the, the talk to get on zipper access. So I got to get the S2 guy to get that information to put it on class. And then I just start putting in the data. So I start putting in the data, and boom, it just starts coming out like crazy. We're like, holy crap, we've got dudes that have been here 300 and some odd days. This guy's been in and out like 3 or 4 times, right? So then we married that with the BAT Hide information. And then, of course, we pushed it all back to MNDB. Within 24 hours, General Petraeus, he was the guy in charge at that time, flies out to our little cop where we're at, and he's like, how did you guys do this? So I had to tell them the story, and they were just blown away that I was. And then they were like, hey, do you want to come work with us down in, Victory Base? I'm like, no, I'm good. But what led 72 hours after that, we had Task Force 20, Task Force 19 show up, we found the guys' HVIs that were tied to the data that you guys were providing sexy, because the biometrics matched what they had left behind for evidence on some IEDs that they'd built. And once that happened, that got implemented countrywide. Yeah. So my wife is really proud. She wasn't proud at the time because she didn't know the significance of it, but she got a certificate of appreciation from General Petraeus. And, to her, yeah, she was just like, this is kind of nice. And I'm like, babe, I don't think you understand. And one of her own actual civilian workers who was prior military said, oh my God, that's kind of a big deal. Like, so, but it's weird how you and I were kind of in the same circles as far as gathering intel and dispersing information, not even realizing it. That's really cool, man. I mean, I love that. So you knock out education while you're there. And I remember those days. They're long days, man. But typically when you're on deployment, if you're not patrolling or if you're not working, a 12-hour shift, you can either do education, work out at the gym, or both, right? You can only watch so many burnt, as we would call Haji movies. So it's cool that you actually persevered. Now, were you married at this time during those deployments at all?
Yeah. I got married December of 23 or 03. So that would have been about 4 years before that.
Okay. And then did you have any kids at this time while deployed?
No. We didn't have any kids until 2010.
Okay.
So we were
crazy.
We were in that married with no kids stage.
Okay. Gotcha. Awesome. Well, let's talk about that. What made you guys flip from that to having a family? Because that's going to lead into my next question, obviously.
Well, it was just
What made the decision to have?
it was just time. It was time in service where I'd come off of essentially back to back arduous duty with submarine deployments, then back to back Iraq deployments. So it was time for a break, of deployments, and it was a good time to have kids.
Awesome. I love that. So now you've built this career. You're going. I think we met when you had about just under 5 years left in the Navy,
Yeah,
right?
so I think you and I met
Because
in
you just
2000.
time after we met, right?
Yeah, you know what? I can tell you exactly when we met. We met January 25th of 2019. I know that.
19. Okay.
I know that because that's the day that I sold my house in Georgia. And I was getting ready to buy another house
Gotcha.
in Hawaii. And my realtor said, "Hey, you
Yep.
need to talk to Jason." And I'm looking at
Because
her over
Dustin,
FaceTime.
right?
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know who Jason is. Pardon me. And she said, "You need to call him." And I said, "Dustin, it's like 8 o'clock at night." And she goes, "Call him. He'll answer." And you answered. I called. We had about an hour-long conversation. We never once talked money.
Yep.
We never once talked money. We
That's
didn't
true.
talk a deal. We talked about, shoot, man, I don't remember I think we talked about Iraq
Like
or
football,
yeah,
college.
something. Yeah, I think maybe moving back to Hawaii because that was going to be my third time moving back to Hawaii. We talked
Yep.
anything but money.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got off the
I've
phone and my
never been.
wife goes, "We gonna work with him or what's going on?" I was like, I don't know. I never even talked money with him, but he's a cool guy.
I mean, I think you know me enough by now. I really enjoy getting to know people, and when I say I really do enjoy helping veterans, I don't think you can enjoy helping someone if you don't get to know them, right? And so yeah, I like to do that with everyone. I just like to find out if we're a good fit. You know what I mean? Like, because if we're not a good fit personality wise and business wise, it's gonna be miserable, right? So, but yeah, you bought the house in Hawaii. You were there until what, 22, 21? Because it was a short tour for you there, right?
So, well, I was supposed to retire then, and
Right.
I think I got like maybe 2 months notice that I was going to be moving to Virginia.
Yep.
So I didn't want to be a landlord, so I went ahead and I sold that house in Hawaii. And
Yep.
then you and I
And we
worked
were
on
going to help you
another
buy a
deal.
home in Virginia, but when that didn't work out, the house wasn't right. Right.
Yep, yep. At the walkthrough,
Yeah.
there was some integrity issues on the seller's part came up, and
Yep.
I was now most people don't know this,
Now,
but
hold
you
on a
got
second. I remember this conversation because you called me. You're like, Jay, what would you do? And what did I say?
I'd get out of there, man. I'd walk.
Right. I didn't say, oh, you need to close the loan. I'm like, dude, you need to
And you
cut
told me
bait.
that. Now, what most people don't know is at this time, I had 12 months and 1 day left when I was supposed to close on the House of Virginia. That's what I had left in service. It was 12 months and 1 day for my retirement. So when the House deal fell through, we kind of talked and we said, well, we don't have the 12 months and I don't have an offer letter. So I was out of eligibility for the time for my VA loan. So we discontinued.
Well, and I think there was a little bit more in that too, right? Because you guys were still undecided as to whether that was going to be where you were going to stay. Because you had some opportunities, which we'll get that in the next question too. But there was definitely some instability as to, is this where we're going to be? I mean, I think through conversations we had, that was one option. I think Alaska was an option, right? At one point, I think Washington might have been an option at one point as well, right?
All 49 states but California were options.
Yeah, right. So, which leads me to my next question. So now you decide not to buy the home, and we'll roll back to the VA home loan in a minute. But you've got 12 months left before you decide to retire. You know as well as I do, being a petty officer second class, you know, you're a workhorse, right? So chain of command, even though they know that they have certain guidelines of when they're supposed to let you start your transition journey, I guess, if you don't look out for yourself, you're going to end up short on the stick. So walk us through that. How did you say have the foresight to say, okay, I know I'm going to be out within this time frame? When did you get started on, having a professional LinkedIn profile, doing the TAP stuff? Like, what? Walk us through the process. And was there anybody that helped guide you, or was this like all you?
Sure. So I hate to do this, but to answer this question, we got to back up a little bit. So you
Okay.
really got to back up to the COVID lockdown, 2020.
Yep.
Sitting at home, 2 weeks, 3 weeks go by. My wife looks at me and she kind of goes, "Are you going back to work?" And I said, "One day, I don't know when." And she said, "Well, you're 3 years from retirement. You should probably finish your degree." So at that time, I
Okay.
hadn't finished my bachelor's degree. And I said, "You know what? You're right. I need to do this now." So I got hot. I enrolled that day. Classes started about maybe 3 or 4 weeks later. But I went back to school time and a half because I had stopped going to school after I got my associates.
Hey, folks, if you're here, that means this podcast has went at least 25 minutes. And I don't know whether I should apologize or say thank you, because that means if you're watching me right now, you're actually finding value in this episode. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for staying as long as you have. But I'm asking you to do me a favor. Like, subscribe, and share so that way other people can also enjoy the benefit of the information that we're putting out each week, right? We've got some great guests that are coming on here. I share some of my insights about some crazy wackadoo things. Oh, because you're listening and watching right now. But again, I just want to say thank you so much.
So I was 60 credits shy of my bachelor's, and I knocked out 60 credits in about 16 months. Pretty much, I just hate free time. I don't like to, sit still.
Hold on, we're going to pause there. The key to here, though, is you didn't wait until 1 year. You
No.
actually started this process 3 years out. You had a plan, like, I got to get this degree done for my career field, right? That
Yep.
was step one, right?
Yep.
Okay. 16 months, basically almost a year and a half later. Now you got about a year and a half left to serve the Navy. What were the next steps? Or were you doing stuff congruently while going to school?
So no, I was all in on school. I went full time and a half, I guess. Finished that up. I ended up going back to work in about my 4 month mark. So I was working full time and then going to school full time. When I left Hawaii, I had 15 months left. And when I went to a brand new command. They were just establishing themselves. They were just getting stood up. So there was 5 of us there when I got there. There was supposed to be 50 of us by the time I was gonna retire. So I kind of lucked out in that stage. Somebody was looking out for me because I didn't have enough time to be operational. So I didn't catch any deployments. And I was already trained, so I didn't have to go to training. So really, I was just kind of that. I guess if they had like a company NCO, not the first sergeant rather, but just kind of like a staff NCO that was kind of just helping out ops.
Okay.
I was pretty fortunate. I did that until January of 23. I asked my department head. I said, "Hey, my relief is here now. Can I turn over? Can I start really focusing on myself?" And they were good with that. So what I ended up doing was I was enrolled with the Department of Labor with their career navigator. I started that in
Okay.
January. I started the USO transitions program. Started that in
Okay. The
January.
Pathfinder program.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
And so the Pathfinder program, I was meeting with the counselor about once every 2 months, once a month, every 2 months. And I was doing a self-paced data analysis program put on by IBM. So all that pivot table fancy stuff you were talking about in Iraq where you're overlaying data, I've done that for 20 years. So I was getting formally certified for that.
Gotcha.
And then with the career navigator, Amy, she's still a really good friend of mine. We still talk periodically, and she was
The
helping me
Amy
with interview.
Rolfs?
No, Amy Patello.
Okay.
She's in the Virginia Beach area.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
So she was helping me interviews, goals, kind of prepping for like salary negotiations and that kind of stuff. So I started
Okay.
that, and then I had a buddy that was doing IVMF through Syracuse University, the Danello Institute. It's Onward to Opportunity. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
Yes, I have.
So at that time, everybody was telling me I was kind of stuck in the military echo chamber. They were telling me, "Oh, you need to go project management. You know, you're a project manager." And man, I was drinking the
Now,
Kool-Aid.
when
I
you
had
say
that.
everybody, I'm assuming senior to you, right?
Oh, everybody that had transitioned before me, or that,
Okay.
or that now that I know how the world works, had a stake in this. Everybody was telling me, "Hey, you need to go project management." And I'm like, "Okay, I guess I could do that." So I have a degree. I've led projects in the military. Let me go get my PMP. So I signed up through IVMF and I started doing the PMP stuff. And I got all the
Okay.
way to the certification piece, and I realized I don't want to do this.
I want to do this. Now, that being the case, how much time do you have left in the Navy before this aha moment happened?
So I took 100 days transition leave between the 10 days of house hunting and job hunting and the terminal leave. I took 100 days. So,
So you had a lot in the bank, is what you were saying. You had a lot of banked up leave,
yeah, because of COVID, you couldn't go anywhere. So I had all kinds of vacation.
and they didn't make you do use or lose. They got rid of that.
Yeah, they carried it. So I had enough. I kept enough to do 100 days. And
Wow.
I took off in my RV, and I had my retirement ceremony. Everybody, you get your fake certificates and everything, right? You shake hands, and
Yep. Walk the stage.
yeah, they kind of they raise their hand and they go, "Hey, your service is done." Well, I got in my RV and I drove west, and I'm still doing the PMP stuff. I'm at my parents' house now because we were hanging out with them for a month or so before we figured out where we are going to end up. And I'm sitting on the couch one day and I go, I just don't want to do this anymore. I had 60 days of paychecks coming, and I had changed my mind completely of what I wanted to do. So I had put in, at this time, I'd only put in about 100 job applications before I realized I don't want to be a PM. I don't want that stress. I don't even really like spreadsheets.
Oh, goodness.
So, so I said, you know what? I got to go back to doing what I do. But what I do is mainly on the East Coast. So I had a buddy that I called. He works for Raytheon. And I said, hey,
Okay.
man, help me out. What should I do? And he goes, well, look, counterterrorism is dying. He's like, that money is going away. You got to find another industry that the government, if you want to be government contractor, that the government's going to focus on. And I said, okay, that's pretty easy. I'm literally right now, I watched a rocket launch last night from Vandenberg. I'm 3 hours from Vandenberg. And
Jeez.
I had been anti-California because I didn't want to pay the taxes and everything. So then I
Right.
started doing the math and running the calculators, and I realized it was going to be about $1,000 a year cheaper in taxes to stay in California versus going back to Virginia.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I said, you know what? Family's all here.
Right. That's awesome. So, and of course, financial relief. I mean, those worries pretty much go away. You, you're in great shape. And the key to this for the listeners watching or listening, you start this plan 3 years in advance. you leveraged your network. I heard you multiple times say that I reached out to a friend about this. You seek guidance, right? You didn't try to do it all on your own. And then let's be honest, especially my line of work that I did in the military, you're taught to solve at the lowest level, problem solve at the lowest level, and not to seek help or guidance, right? So that's for you to be able to have that foresight and do it. That's huge, because a lot of veterans don't do that, right? Now let's talk about finances and the VA home loan. When we met, like you said, you just sold a home. You'd already used the VA home loan once. Were you at Tybee Island or King George or whatever in Georgia? Is that
It's in Augusta. It's I think they call it Fort Eisenhower now. It was Gordon.
okay? Gotcha. So you used it once, did well on it, obviously. Bought the home in Hawaii, sold, used the VA home loan benefit, sold it, did very well as well, considering that market, right? Took a little bit of a hiatus. Now you own your home in California, which I helped you with as well, using your VA home loan benefit. For the naysayers out there, the people that are just diehard Dave Ramsey fans and don't believe that the VA home loan is a good deal because it's too high cost or there's hidden fees, talk a little bit about that as best you can within your knowledge. And I'm not going to say limited knowledge, because you and I have very lengthy conversations about markets and rates and all types of stuff. Tell people from your firsthand experience why you believe in it so much, how it honestly, I think, has changed your life dramatically on top of whatever you've done, going into the professional sector, and what guidance or advice you would give to someone that's thinking about the idea of home ownership.
That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, it's about opportunities. The VA loan is an opportunity. It's not, you don't have to use it. There's great benefits if you do. There's great benefits to a traditional loan too, if you're in the financial situation where you can do that. But for you have to look at the pay scale that most enlisted service members are on. Honestly, a traditional loan is not it's not an option for most of them, just because of the money down that you need. It's difficult to save 20% down when you're a career service member. It's not to say it's impossible. It's not to say you can't do it. It's just tough. So I think that the VA loan is really about opportunities. They waive the PMI, right? They're the backing on the loan. The VA's the backing on the loan, and they really put a lot of trust in their service member, that their service member is going to be able to make the payment, because they're assuming all the risk essentially. This is the way I see it. So I've used my loan 3 times. Bought a house in Georgia, bought a house in Hawaii, and I have my house now here on the Central Coast in California. I've never been above the minimum. They do have a minimum, or a maximum rather. I've never been above that for all
Well,
of the
so hold on.
situation.
Kind of not really.
Yeah.
That all changed in 2019, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. So back in the day,
But you've
you had
always
to
bought
be
it with a budget in mind.
absolutely, absolutely. So I've always had a budget in mind for everything I've done, just because I don't want to be house poor. Even
Right.
my house that I have today, I bought a complete fixer. You know, it still had the mothballs from grandma. It looked like 1992. It smelled like 1994, and the floors were from 87. But I'm fortunate that it put me in a situation where I was able to get into the market, because if you look at the prices now, they've gone up, even though rates have really stayed where they're at. So, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to put, 20% down or even 10% down to purchase a home, especially, I think you probably remember this. I closed like maybe 8 days after I started my new job,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I was
Because that
emailing
was a
you.
lot of fun verifying income with Bruce Allen.
Yeah,
You, it was actually easy, but my other Bruce Allen clients, not so much.
yeah, yeah. It was a little bit of a challenge there, but I think it would have been more of a challenge if it had been a traditional loan. I think that there's a lot of,
Oh, for sure.
I think there's,
Well, you got the lax. Yeah.
there's a lot of little
Go ahead.
nuances with the VA loan that I'm not saying that they overlook, but that they don't focus on nearly as much as a different style of loan. So the best advice I can give
Well, let's talk about
is
it.
set a budget.
With the VA, really, yeah, what's most important is one, the budget. Can the veteran afford it? And debt to income isn't as important as residual, because it's how much money you have left over after making your mortgage payment. As like you said, or you alluded to earlier, I never bought at the max peak of the VA limit because I didn't want to be house rich and lifestyle poor, right? And that's the beauty of the VA loan. It fits so many different people's categories of, because of that being a budget based loan. So, and it's really about, is the home, livable, habitable, and safe, right? Does it meet the minimum property requirements? You mentioned that you bought, grandma's old home, had good bones, but you had the foresight to say, hey, we can make this into something pretty special. And, let's be honest, most markets that you go to, most realtors are not familiar with VA home loans other than what they've heard from their peers from 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. So there's a lot of myths, right? And, like you said, you bought 3 homes, right? Using your VA home loan benefit. And there's a lot of people they're struggling just trying to buy their first home using their VA home loan benefit because either A, they don't have the right lender, or B, they don't have the right realtor, or both, right? And then they get talked into doing an FHA loan where they got to put 3.5% down with mortgage insurance, or first time home buyer conventional loan. You can put 3% down, you're going to have PMI, but typically your rate's about a point to a point and a half higher. And it's sad because, like you said, it's an opportunity, but it's also a benefit that you only get through service to the country, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of a big deal. You also mentioned about how, the VA takes onus or responsibility because they assume that the veterans are going to make their payments. Well, with the way that the loan is structured, yes. And in fact, when you compare a VA loan to your standard conventional loan of, let's say, 20% down, the VA loan has a much lower foreclosure rate than people that put 20% down. In fact, the VA loan has a 1.92% foreclosure rate. 1.92. So to put that in perspective, there's over 60 billion typically on an average year of VA home loans that are processed. 60 with a B, right? So if less than 1.92 and the current default rate for conventional loans is pushing 3%, that's massive, right?
Yeah.
So, and then, like I always like to say, am I a little biased? Of course, because I served. I just, me personally, I think someone that serves their country, and I'm sure I'm going to piss people off with this, I think they're a better class of person because they understand what it is to sacrifice for something greater than themselves. Hence why I also hire veterans, right? I mean, Chip, Colonel Chip, right? I mean, I know pretty much exactly what type of work ethic I'm going to get from a fellow veteran, right? I'm going to get someone that's going to, we do the job to task, not to time, right? Do the job to standard, not to time. So, and I think that's part of the reason why the VA home loan performs so well. Because like someone like you, with your job and your security clearance, stuff of that nature, you can't afford to have a bad FICO score. You can't have a bad credit report. You don't have a job if you do, right? And if you default on a mortgage, or if you're late on a mortgage and that FICO score goes down, because of the type of work you do, they're automatically going to revoke that security clearance because now you pose a risk to national security because you become someone that could be targeted by nefarious people because they can offer you money to get you out of a financial situation, right?
No, you're absolutely right. So we all fall under the continuous evaluation program. It has
Yeah.
built-in flags. If you miss, I think it's if you're 30 days late, it automatically notifies the security center. So they come out and start asking questions.
Yeah. And nobody wants to go through that. And
No,
you've got a
no.
family.
No,
You know what I mean?
that was the biggest thing. So if it were up to me, I probably would have stayed in my RV and I would have traveled the country and I would have taken the kids on their homeschool journey. Three other people get a vote. This, and all three of my kids wanted stability. So what you're describing is exactly that. It's stability. So
I love it,
that's
man.
no, I agree, man. You got to take opportunities and you got to turn them into stability for yourself.
That being said, to close out the show, what are some, three pearls of wisdom or advice that for a person that's getting ready to transition veteran service into the professional world? What are your top three things that you would recommend for them to do if they haven't done it already?
Start building your network yesterday. And when I say that,
Explain.
I mean while you're in service, you need to start building your network. Take all those senior NCOs and senior officers, add them to your LinkedIn. If they don't have a LinkedIn, get on them. Tell them they need to have one. Build that in-service network because those guys, if they leave the service before you, they're going to go out and try to do exactly what you're trying to do. They're going to help you pave that path. They're going to tell you, don't try to go that way. I tried it. That's a dead end. Maybe you need to focus here a little bit more. So
So
my
let's talk
network,
about that. My network. This little thing in your hand probably has anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 names on it throughout any time of your career, right?
yeah, probably. Yeah,
That's a pretty powerful database if you think about it.
absolutely. And I've leaned into mine. I mean,
For sure.
I consider you a big piece of my network.
Thanks,
So
brother.
I like to build a team. I like the team concept. If I want to go pull 100,000 in equity out of my house, I need to know who I'm calling. And in inverse, if I need some industry insight, I know who I'm calling. I like to build a team because that's what I did for 20 years. We operated as a team. Everybody's an expert at something. It may not be something that's useful, but everybody's an expert at something.
So caveat off that real quick before we get to your next two items. One of the things I always tell my folks that work with me, I hate to say work for me because that's obvious, but same thing. I believe in it. The team concept is that what you do is just one facet of you. What will keep people connected with you is your ability to connect them with other people or other things that they need as well, right? So when you talk about building a network, no matter where I've lived, I get involved in my community. And it's basically like, hey, I bring this to the table. I'm looking for people that can do this to help my other clients. Oh, I need a financial planner. I need a CPA. I need, sometimes a divorce attorney, right? Like, I need some, not for me personally, but I'm just saying, like,
No, I get
but
it.
a lot of my clients, they stay connected with me, not just because of the loan side. I would like to think it's also because we're genuinely friends, but because they know, like, you know what? Jay knows a lot of people. Hey, man, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And if I have some knowledge on it, I'll be like, hey, you know what? I've been down that road. Here's the pros and cons. Or, hey, you know what? I don't know exactly, but I guarantee you I know someone that does. Give me 24 hours and I'll find someone. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
and it's about bringing that type of value, not just in the business sector, but as a person, right? I mean, to whether it's to your family or what have you. So yes, when you talk about get that network going as if it was like yesterday, that should be like a continual thing. You're not just doing that to transition out. That should be pretty much a lifelong just discipline, right? It should
Absolutely.
be something that you do, right? So that was number one. What's number two?
Have a goal, have a vision, know where you want to go.
So I'm
Because you
assuming
can't,
you're going to say with the goal and the vision, it's just a dream if you don't execute, right?
well, that's true. Because if you don't have a goal and a vision, you can't set milestones and you can never achieve it.
Right?
Otherwise, you're just walking around aimlessly. Like for me, I was going to become a project manager. That was not my goal. That was not my dream. That was not my vision. That was what other people were telling me I needed to do. And I needed to see past that and really understand what was important to me for me to be where I am today.
Ultimately, I would think your base goal is you just want to be able to be the provider for your family, right?
Well,
Provide that stability.
well, yes and no. I've seen a lot of people that can provide for their family that are absolutely miserable because they don't enjoy what they're
True.
doing.
True.
So, so for me, I had to find a way to provide that stability while still finding something that was relatively enjoyable to do.
That you could be
That's not to
passionate about.
say, yeah, that's not to say I love my job. It's a great job. I'm on the staff of a 3-star component command for space. Do a
You
lot of
just had
wicked.
to read like the House committee of something, right?
Yeah, last week I was in with some staff members for the House Armed Services Committee. So, and
I mean, think about it. As a petty officer second class, you didn't do that. I mean, yes, you
no,
may have
no,
briefed
no,
some
no,
admirals,
no,
right?
no, no. Yeah. So, I
So
mean,
that's kind of a big deal.
it is a big deal. So, part of my leverage on this team that I'm part of, I bring the Navy experience. So, when you're talking about a joint component, they need somebody that has that Navy planning experience. So, that's what I bring to the table. That's kind of my unique uh, buy.
Skill
So,
set.
yep.
Okay.
So, that's my first one is build your network. Second one, have a vision, have a dream, have milestones that you want to set to get there. And my third one is it's pretty simple. Enjoy the ride.
So you say live in the moment. Don't get too caught up in the future. Don't get caught up in the past.
To a degree, yes. So I was so focused on finding that next job that I was having a hard time seeing the forest through the trees. And it wasn't something until after I transitioned and I had been working for maybe about 6 months that I turned around and kind of went, "Whoa, how did we get here? Maybe I should have stopped and enjoyed this a little bit more." That last month of service, whether you do 4 years or you do 40, I really wish I would have smelled the roses. I wish I would have taken it in a little bit more. Looking back, that was the easy life. That was the good life. But the benefits of service, I'm
Let's be
feeling.
honest. I don't think that's unfamiliar to too many of the veterans that will maybe watching this, right? I think we're all wired that way. You're just always constantly ready for that next rung, that next, responsibility, next promotion, whatever, right? Because that's just the way we're so task oriented, the way that we're bred, like you said, whether it's 4 years or 40 years, the system is the same. That's just the way that we're designed and trained. And, so for you to say, enjoy the ride, that's foreign, right? Because that's just not an option typically when you serve, right? I mean, it's not. Where now, in retrospect, you know, I get it. I retired, but I didn't walk a stage. I didn't want the ceremony. I didn't want all that stuff at that time. Where now looking back, I'm thinking, man, that ceremony wasn't really for me. That was really for my wife. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
so it was kind of selfish of me to not do that, right? And that's something obviously I can't ever go back and do. So I get it, right? Being present, right? And that is hard because we do get so focused on that 1,000-meter target, we typically skip the 50-meter target for sure.
Absolutely. I did the ceremony and I'm glad I did it. I had in the Navy, there's a tradition when somebody retires, they read a poem. It's called The Watch. And it's essentially one of your, call them shipmates, battle buddies, reads the watch and they tell you, hey, you're relieved. We got it from here. And my ceremony was very purposeful. The chaplain was a man that I served on submarines with. He was a enlisted electronic warfare technician that sat the stack with me. He got out several years later, earned a commission, and he's a chaplain now. Jim,
Wow.
he did my ceremony. Was super happy to have him there, man. It was awesome. And then the MC was a guy that was on my very first deployment that we hadn't seen each other in about 20 years, and we met back up at my last command. He was the SEL of the command at that time. So, rich history there. And then the man that read the watch
Yeah.
was one of my good friends. He he embodied everything that I wanted people to carry on about my service. So I had Sean come up and read the watch, and it really gave me the closure that I needed to be able to walk away with no regrets. So I'm super happy I did it. My family got their closure. I got my closure, and it was about moving on to the next chapter. I just wish I would have sat in that moment a little bit longer, just a little bit sweeter.
Understood.
But it was a wonderful ceremony. I had family from all over the world come out, and when I say all over the world, I mean I had Florida, California family, friend family came all the way from
Yep.
Maryland to Virginia Beach, and it was a good week. Family in town and ceremony and everything. So, and hey, guess what we had for the meal?
Don't tell me hula huli chicken or something like that.
Spam musubi, chicken katsu,
Okay, I knew it. It was going to be a Hawaiian dish, of course.
and pulled pork.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Well, on that note, Bubba, man, thank you so much for doing this. I love sharing your story. Folks, Kevin Fagundes, Petty Officer Second Class, Navy, now works with Booz Allen. Great dude. Anything that you take away from this podcast today is the fact that this man, and let's be honest, Petty Officer Second Class is an E5, correct?
First class.
In the Navy? Oh, sorry, Petty Officer First Class, E6 in the Navy. Those of you that are listening or watching, you know someone that's probably on the backside of their career getting ready to get out, and they may need a little nudge or a little help, right? Listen to what the man said, right? Start as if it was yesterday. And if you're not 3 years out, but you're less than 12 months out, then it's even more urgent to get that plan. Come up with the dream, the goal, the benchmarks, right? Don't be idle, but at the same time, enjoy the ride. Folks, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in on this one. Kevin, dude, it was awesome having you here. I really appreciate it. And everyone have a great day, and we'll see you on the next, The Veterans Financial Edge.